sure how prevalent that is, but my first question for you is, are you currently using amateur radio equipment as a paramedic? And if so, what are you using? And if you could kind of follow up with that and just expand on your video a little bit and share with the folks watching what that was all about.
Yeah, so just to recap before I answer your question, the video was just my response to that. I thought it was really great that Josh had brought that to light and he told that story. That was really good, but it was not at all uncommon. And so I wanted to share some of the times that I've done this, and I know there's lots of other people out there who have had to use their amateur radio equipment in the public service just for whenever our admin fails us or our regular commercial equipment fails us. It's a fail safe, it's a stopgap. And what I learned after posting that video, there were dozens of people who commented saying, yep, I'm a firefighter, I've had to do that too, or I work in this or that service, I'm a cop, and I've always had an amateur radio in my car, and that's how we kept in touch, like, you know, in between calls or something like that. It was even more prevalent. I knew it was prevalent. It was even more prevalent than I had suspected. So to answer your question, no, I don't routinely use amateur radio equipment. I think your best bet is always going to be to use whatever commercial grade, field grade equipment that your admin provides for you. But it is not at all a bad idea to have something else that's maybe a little bit more open and can be field programmable for those situations where our admin are either not providing us the proper tools to do our jobs, because radios are safety equipment. If you need to call for somebody for help really, really quickly, pulling out your cell phone, ripping off your gloves, and hoping your fingers not covered in whatever mud or blood or whatever to punch your code into your keypad, you know, that's slow. And then you have to wait on hold on 911 for the dispatch operator. Whereas if you punch your radio, they're already listening for you and they're waiting for you if you run into trouble, or if your patient runs into trouble, or you whatever extra resources that you need really, really quickly. That's just the fastest way to get them. And so radios are safety equipment. But if our admin aren't providing quality equipment, if they're providing you broken equipment, pardon me, or if there's just those unforeseen circumstances, those interoperability issues like this firefighter on Josh's video described, where they had switched over to, I believe, an 800 or 900 megahertz system, totally forgot to accommodate for the helicopter, which did not have that capability. They were on 2-meter VHF. And so they had that oh shit moment, and they grabbed a ham radio, which the firefighter did not provide, by the way. Listen up, everybody. It was the ambulance driver. It was the medic. They were the ones prepared. It's just the firefighter using the equipment. Sorry, it's just a little bit of a rivalry in my industry. But
and so, why did the paramedic just happen to have a ham radio on him?
Because paramedics are awesome. What kind of a question is that? Do you have any more?
You're right. I should know better. But
I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's kind of. I mean, that was convenient that he happened to have it.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably like what I have. I've got an amateur radio in my backpack, which has all sorts of stuff in it, and it's primarily an amateur radio. But in a pinch, if my primary commercial grade equipment goes down, that's what I'm using. And that's what I have used numerous times in the past.
And for those watching, if you want to catch it, I've got Drew's channel up. So it's the one that reads amateur radio equipment and public safety. That's the video in question. So if you want to go check that out, you certainly can. How about you, Jared? You ever hack any amateur radio equipment when you were working as a first responder?
Kind of. So right after I graduated high school, excuse me, I worked for a Motorola service shop, a local shop, and I would bring the laptop computer home with me, and because I had a take-home vehicle because I've gotten to do service calls. So I brought the laptop down to the fire department one night and programmed all the radios in the fire trucks for the local repeaters.
The amateur repeaters?
Yeah, the amateur repeater in the area. So, and then whenever I left to go to the military, I took them all back out. But and I think at that time I probably carried a portable, just to have it, just to look cool, because I was 18, 19 years old and it was fun. But other than that, no. That was the only time I've ever had any kind of meshing of amateur radio and public safety.
I know a
So
guy
if
that
there are,
worked
if
for. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was
I was going to
stepping
say,
on
if
you.
there are any public safety guys out there who are watching, most of your commercial equipment is capable of transmitting on the amateur equipment. So it is not a bad idea just to have that capability, even if you're not an amateur radio operator. Just have that ready to go, because there may be a situation where you do have to interface with amateur radio operators, and I don't know exactly what that looks like. But Hurricane Helene certainly brought up some interesting possibilities for interoperability between amateurs and public safety. So the opportunities are out there. Our phones, our entire phone network will sometimes go down, and so I'll switch over. I'm not getting any 911 calls, right? So I'll switch over to the amateur radio tower just to listen and see. I haven't had any emergencies come through the amateur radio towers yet, but at least I'm doing something to listen out in case somebody needs some help.
And I don't know of any 911 center out there that actively monitors a amateur radio frequency of any type.
No, that would be so exhausting for them. They'd have to listen to all of
Yeah.
that in addition to the cop traffic and all the license plates coming through. And yeah,
If there was an activation of some kind, I know here in our county, they have a comms trailer, and it's just getting started. They're doing a local MCOM type thing. And if they're activated for like a countywide emergency or a larger scale incident, they'll integrate the amateur radio community into the dispatch at that point, but it's not done on a routine basis.
Yeah, I knew a guy who he worked for the Bureau of Land Management, and I guess they have their radios, but he also had he just had a Bofang UV5R in his truck, and actually ended up using it one day because someone was, I think, calling for help on, I think FRS, even though you're not supposed to, use your UV5R for that, but he was just using it mainly to monitor, and happened to pick someone up that was, I guess, stranded out there, and they were having some sort of medical event. And I don't recall exactly what it was. It was years ago when I heard this story, but he used his radio for that. So, I mean, I think for that kind of stuff, there's certainly a practical use for it. However, Drew, I think someone left a comment on your video to the effect of keep amateur radio, separate from from commercial use. And I don't know if that person really expanded on that, but
no,
I don't
never
know.
heard back from them.
Yeah, I think in emergency situations, I think it's perfectly, acceptable and understandable that you would use it for that.
And moral,
Yeah.
completely moral. I fail to find any moral conflict for an urgent operational necessity that would save lives. But for general routine purposes, I absolutely agree. That's not front line. The dispatch center should not be dispatching 911 calls out over amateur radio. I never suggested that, and I don't know what that fellow was trying to say. There was a couple of really incoherent comments that I couldn't wrap my brain around, and they never cared to explain.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to make everybody happy. We saw Taylor's video here recently on Rant Strategies, where all he did was he just reviewed a Bofang clone of an ICOM, and he caught so much hate for that. I could not understand why. He never told people to go and replace their Motorola or ICOM or whatever public safety radio with a Bofang. It's just something that interested him, and he
People got big
all
mad,
sorts of hell from it. I don't understand that.
Well, they
It's
accused
weird.
him of comparing, I guess, apples to oranges, and that's not what he was doing. He was just like, "Hey, this is a lot like a radio I used to carry," and talked about it. But
The basic outline of the radio is based off the APRX or whatever it is.
Yeah,
The
from
APX,
a Motorola. Yeah.
That's all it is.
But yeah,
I've seen people do that on your channel too, Jared. People like they watch the first 30 seconds and they form an opinion, and they're like, I got to let everybody know my opinion about this, but they never care to even understand what your message is, and I don't understand that.
So Yard Sale says, we've got an MCOM group in my county. It's operated by Aries folks when the county needs them.
Yard Sale, if you won't care to expand on that at all, I'd be really curious if to hear any success stories that they've posted. One of the things I've noticed about Aries, they're terrible at actually the public messaging of the things that they do. And so we're always just kind of left wondering what they do. And there's never any really good community outreach. I'd just love to hear those success stories, that follow up.
And it looks like C103 is lurking. Welcome, sir.
Hello.
Proceed with the lurking. Yeah.
Lurk away.
A lot of the problems with these Aries groups and INCOM groups is that they're, I think they're still activated by phone lists.
Oh, that's funny.
Are they?
I'm assuming a lot of them are. I'm not saying that they all are.
Right.
It's a weakness.
Or it's internet based or whatever. There's no really, I don't know of any group out there that has a system in place to where they can be paged over the radio to activate them, like a fire department being toned out for a call. So if the internet's out and phone service is out, how are they going to activate these groups?
I don't know. We have not too far from where I live, there's an emergency operations center, and that's actually where I went last time to take my general exam. And it's a pretty cool little building, but I think that's probably one of the areas where, you know, they would send out notification to people probably on local repeaters and things, you know, that there's an emergency or something. But yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
That'd be wise to set up a two-tone like you're talking about, though, Jared. Two-tone
really
alert,
would.
so that you're not getting fatigued listening to a repeater with people talking about the weather and their new radio and everything. You just got that one radio set and ready to listen for that two-tone.
To have that happen, to where a dispatch center would be tied into an amateur radio repeater to do a two-tone call. But it's capable of doing it. It's just the bureaucracy, I think, it would hold it back.
And money.
Yeah. Money. It's always money.
Bye.
Was it a surprise? Well, I guess it's not a surprise to you, but on Ham Radio Crash Course, was that guy kind of surprised that a firefighter had used a 2-meter radio for emergency comms? Or
he did seem surprised by it. I first heard about it on his podcast. He discussed it on his podcast, and he says, "Oh, I got to get that guy on my show," and he was really excited. And I hope I don't sound disparaging at all, but I don't think he realized that it's everywhere. It's already everywhere. So, but it was really important that he made that video because it brought it to light. It illustrated that this is very common. A lot of people have stumbled upon the solution to this without discussing it. And I think that dovetails really well into our next topic, if we're ready to move on.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of the regulations that do get in our way, and people have just found this solution around some of that in urgent situations.
So this one's kind of interesting, and I guess this is kind of goes into our current events section, but we'll hit it early. So I guess recently the FCC chair, I believe his name is Brendan Carr, he launched what the FCC says is a massive new deregulatory initiative, and it's under a docket titled Delete, 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 and that's what you're looking at right now. But basically the goal under this initiative is to look at every rule, regulation, or guidance document for potential elimination or revision. And the intent is to reduce unnecessary regulatory burdens to aid in furthering economic prosperity by ending regulations that stymie business growth. And so basically the FCC is seeking the public's input on the initiative. And although this effort seems to be primarily focused on businesses, it might be an interesting opportunity to provide suggestions about reviewing some of the regulations surrounding amateur radio or possibly GMRS. But they do leave there is a link somewhere that I came across where you can submit any opinions that you might have. They do basically ask that you back it up and provide something substantive. So if you're suggesting a revision or removal of a regulation, they want to know why, of course, and how it's currently impacting the public and businesses, and what you believe the benefits of either revising it or removing it might be. But like I said, it does primarily seem to be geared towards businesses, but that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for radio as well, because I'm sure there's probably quite a few things that people could probably think of off the top of their heads that they're like, maybe we should change, one or two things, with FCC regulations in terms of ham radio. I don't know, Drew or Jared, do you have anything that comes to mind where you're like, hey, I wish the FCC would ease up on a particular regulation or rule?
Jared, I'll yield to you.
There's probably a couple things. Encryption would be one. I'd like to see us be able to use encryption on amateur radio in a limited capacity, not so much on repeaters, but on simplex. Or you could do it on repeaters. You have DMR and D-star repeaters and stuff. I think encryption would be beneficial in some places, but I think it would also make a mess of the bands as well.
Probably.
Yeah, you would have.
It could, yeah.
Just have a complete noise floor across the bands by doing it. So you're gonna get something, but you're gonna give up something with that too.
I think there's probably people that would raise some sort of national security argument there, where if you had some people in this country that were unsavory, they could, and they were going to do something, they could, leverage that to their advantage.
They could do it on non-amateur radio frequencies as well. Yeah. It's.
If you know what you're doing, you can do it now.
Yeah,
you don't really need permission.
Are we aware of any cases of that happening?
Of people using encryption for nefarious reasons?
Of a terrorist using radio waves that are encrypted that nobody was able to detect? Because I'm just curious if that's a founded concern. Because my understanding is that they'll use like video game chat boards, or there was that general having an affair on his wife who was doing draft Google emails or Gmails that just they never sent. They just used that as a dead drop for messages by creating this draft out of a shared account.
The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head that was recent was the whole J6 thing. And after that, if you'll recall, the ARRL posted something on their news feed where it was a friendly reminder to everyone that they can't use their radios to break the law, because I think they were basically saying that people in the J6 crowd were using Bofangs and stuff like that to coordinate. But they didn't mention anything about encryption. So to answer your question, I don't think so. But the only thing I can think of where, authorities were pointing out, don't use amateur GMRS equipment to break the law would be that.
And I'm sure it wasn't amateur radio operators that were doing it. It was bootleggers on amateur frequencies.
Yeah. Well, they decided to lecture the amateur radio crowd for some strange reason, which is interesting because they're the biggest group of rule followers that we have.
Right.
The first ones to probably tell you that,
to an obnoxious fault, sometimes they follow the rules. So you're lecturing the wrong people there, but with that memo.
Yeah, I thought it was.
I'm sure there's been some kind of terrorist activity that's used encrypted radio waves at some point that we've just never heard of because it's never come out in a trial or been publicly.
I've heard of them using WhatsApp, which uses the signal encryption algorithm, but that's over the internet. So I agree with you, Terrence. I agree that argument could possibly come up, but it just sounds like an unfounded argument because there's so many better ways to communicate through an encrypted medium.
And you're right. You're exactly right. Because as you were mentioning that, I started thinking, what about like protests that we've seen not only in this country but around the world? over the years, I mean, people have leveraged mainly the internet and encrypted apps, for that kind of stuff. Like you said, WhatsApp, or, maybe even people were talking about like mesh networks and stuff, So, I mean, I think people would probably gravitate towards the internet before they would probably go through the trouble to encrypt their radios and use it for, you know, nefarious means. But it looks like Yard Sale has one. So I guess this would maybe fall into the category of type acceptance, perhaps. I don't know. You guys will have to
Yeah.
correct me on that. But dual use radios, amateur and GMRS on the same radio. It exists, like the TID radios, you can switch between, you can unlock them. You can set them up to operate on either the ham radio frequencies, GMRS, or you can unlock them to work on both. So the functionality is there, but I guess in terms of regulations, you'd have to probably look at type acceptance, right? Which I'm
With
not
some
an
of the
expert
stuff,
on.
I really wonder. A lot of the stuff's happening now. If I use an amateur radio right now on a GMRS frequency, who is coming to enforce this? Who can detect it and who can enforce it? If I start communicating on amateur bands with encryption, who is coming to enforce this right now? So some of the stuff is happening, can happen, and they have no enforcement capability. It's extraordinarily limited. So it almost seems like theater to
My understanding
maintain a
of,
prohibition on it.
because everyone does talking about, the enforcement part of it, with like the FCC is going to come get you or something. But my understanding is the reality is they allocate a lot of their resources to stopping like pirate radio. So people setting up their own radio stations. And apparently there's a ton of them like on the East Coast, like supposedly in like, the Boston area, for instance, there's people that set up their own transmitters and, play music and have shows, and they're not, licensed or anything. And I think my understanding is the FCC spends a lot of time going after those people and finding them. And it's pretty easy to just kind of go on the website and look for enforcement actions against stuff like that. But
I went through some of the enforcement actions recently, and I did see several pirate FM music radio
Yeah.
stations
yeah, and those are
they've busted.
Yeah, and those seem to be pretty big fines. I mean, you're talking like $20,000-$30,000 for some of them. Now, if you get someone that's really egregious on amateur radio, like I think you mentioned in a past episode, Jared, there was some guy that was, on the forestry frequency and, calling in, officers down and, crazy stuff, they'll go
Calling in air support.
Yeah. They'll go after you for that. But to
You know,
your
I
point,
think as long as you're not interfering with public safety bans and the aviation bans,
Mhm.
they're really not going to pay much attention to you.
Right.
It's that you're spot on. They don't care about amateur and GMRS except for the rare occasion that they do, and they don't have the enforcement for it. So is this all just theater? We're talking
Probably.
about, as you pointed out, some of the most rule following driven people ever, and so it's I think you're surviving a lot by just consent, and they don't have the ability or the desire to actually go after people. Our friend Randomwire found a guy, they DF'd a guy who was intentionally jamming one of their GMRS repeaters.
Right.
And the guy even set up a YouTube channel. It's still up. I watched it. And he brags about jamming them. And they've reported the FCC, and it's been years, and the FCC just doesn't have the ability or the will to come out and take care of it. They know the guy's name. They know where he lives. The guy
probably a
admitted it to their
resource issue.
faces.
A while back, the FCC said that they're not going to do anything, but the people that DF these jammers and stuff should go knock on the door and talk to them themselves.
Oh, really? That's going to be nice until somebody gets shot.
Exactly.
I don't know.
I think they kind of walk back on that some now, but yeah, somebody from the FCC suggested that. I think it was up in New York somewhere.
So
That's
maybe
surprising.
maybe the baby step to deregulating encryption is you can encrypt, but you still got to do your call sign by CW or something, but even then, if somebody doesn't identify, are they going to come out
Well,
and get them? I
if
don't
you're
know.
doing encryption, you're going to be on a digital mode anyhow. So
Or
whenever you
not necessarily,
well, no, I guess so. Yeah, but
but I hear you.
but you could always say also if you are on a digital mode, your call sign could be transmitted digitally, but not encrypted.
Sure. Whatever. So maybe that's the baby step to just make them comfortable with it, but it doesn't eliminate the reality of the situation that they ain't coming after you anyway.
No,
They can't. They don't have the people to do it.
So Yard Sale asked, didn't Christian Slater get in trouble for doing pirate radio? I don't know. I didn't hear that. I'll have to look that up though. That would be interesting if true. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the only other situation where like the government would probably push back on something like that would be if we had a world war, which I know this is kind of a stretch, but if we had a world war, they'd probably tell you for the duration of the war, you can't do that. Because they've done that with amateur radio in the past and previous
Maybe.
world wars. And
But they didn't have the internet back then, so I still think that it's such a limited subset of such a low risk profile.
Even Ukraine during when the whole thing with Russia broke out, they put out basically a moratorium on amateur radio, and only certain people could use it. Essentially,
it's funny because I was working.
I don't think they've lifted that either.
I've been working some guys, not lately, but back, especially in the beginning years of the Ukraine war, I was working guys in Ukraine on FT8.
Yeah, I'm seeing them and in Russia. It just doesn't seem like there's any enforcement there. That makes sense. They're probably busy with other.
To your point, I don't know how they would enforce that unless someone like ratted you out and said, "Hey, Jared's over here transmitting, and let's go get him." But yeah, I don't know.
I can't stand regulation. That's all just theater. Like you're the speed limit. Everybody knows you can go about 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, and the cops aren't going to pull you over. So what's the real speed limit? It's this posted speed limit plus 5 miles an hour. So it just seems like foolish theater to post it lower than what the cops are willing to actually enforce.
Is there anything that you would like to see changed, Drew, other than what Jared was mentioning about encryption? Is there maybe data limits or something? I don't know.
I think the data limits have already been mostly resolved with, I believe, bandwidth rather than speed. They changed their focus on the bandwidth, right? I think that's nice. So. I don't think we need people taking up the entire bandwidth transmissions, but because that's just rude to everybody else. But you guys already snagged my first two. Would be part typing and relaxing on encryption. But I also would like to see on the commercial side the front keypad programmability prohibition go away. I don't know what they're.
Which one is that? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to field program your radio. You could bring a computer out with you and a programming cable and program it by software, but with the commercial radio, you're not allowed to program it. And I've encountered several times issues with interoperability because I could not key in frequencies into my radio.
What is the logic behind that?
I would desperately love to know that. And my assumption
with go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry. I don't want.
I can only make an assumption. It's just my wild ass guess is that they're trying to prevent little programming errors. But the reality is, if you're on a wildland fire, everybody knows the knife trick with the Bendix King radio. You jam a knife in the rear 2 pins and you press a series of buttons and turn it on, and you can field program it. I don't have the whole process committed to memory, but it happens. People figure out ways to get around it because there's an operational need for it. So anything in the way of that is just theater, and it just prevents us from being able to do our jobs effectively.
Well, and a lot of these radios, like we're saying, the functionality is already there. I mean, that's why people Mars mod their radios. So, I mean, you can talk on, various frequencies depending on which radio you've got, of course. But, I mean, it's already there. People are probably mostly already doing it, like you're saying. I guess I guess that ties back to the typed acceptance argument and people who might make arguments about like spurious emissions, stuff like that. Basically, radios that really, like I think the UV5R was one of those radios where people like to throw the spurious emissions argument out there, and that probably was true years ago, but I don't know about now. I mean, they've come a long way.
I think the other reason for the field programmable function and the front panel programmable thing is licensing. An end user that's not licensed, so to speak, such as paramedics and firefighters and cops and such, they're not really licensed to manipulate the radio in the way it operates.
I thought the licensing was just. I thought for commercial use, and I might be wrong about this, but I thought the licensing just pertained to frequency allocations, and so
yeah, and the modulation you're allowed to use.
Well, it also goes into fixing and repairing radios, and programming falls under that, I believe.
Oh, does it? Okay, I didn't know that.
So I know whenever I worked for Motorola, I had to get my general radio telephone operator's license to be able to actually work on a radio, open up a radio.
I was blissfully ignorant of all of that until now.
Yeah,
thanks a lot for that. Now I have no excuse. I don't have any sort of extra licensure or certifications, and I program the radios for my company, so hopefully I'm not getting into some sort of liability there. That's a new one on me. I do really minor repairs that I don't, and everything else I send it out, but what you got?
I don't know if you could see it very well. General.
It's got your social security number. Hold it up closer.
Yeah, we're going to need that. Now that we can dox them.
No, it doesn't. But yeah, this is a general radio telephone operator license. I got this in 1999. And,
how do you get that? How does one obtain that?
You have to take a test.
How long is it good for?
Lifetime. It's a lifetime license. I don't know that it's required anymore, but I think a lot of the regulations go back to that. And that's why a lot of these commercial radios are not programmable, field programmable. Because technically they have to be programmed by a licensed technician or somebody from the company and not an end user.
Well, the end users are doing it, and they jam a knife and short out the rear two pins of a PK. And so I just, what are we doing? What good are we actually providing here to people other than placing unnecessary steps in the way of what they're going to do anyway? It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the regulations seem a little bit ambiguous. And I guess if I was going to offer a suggestion, it would be regarding, I guess, GMRS linking. And so let me just share that really quick. So this is just the current regulations basically about GMRS and linking and linking in terms of currently, there's a lot of ham radio repeaters that are linked all around the country. I guess you can't really do that with GMRS. And so just to kind of unpack this a little bit for people watching, I'm sure Drew and Jared, you probably already know this stuff, but I had to go look it up just to kind of refresh my memory. But basically, for GMRS, basically the current frequency allocations are restricted to certain types of stations. And basically what that means is certain channels are reserved for voice only and others are reserved for very limited voice and data operations. However, none of the GMRS channels are reserved for the exclusive use of any type of system. And so I think that was a little bit of the ambiguity initially, because if you'll recall, I think it was like last year, there was some sort of guidance that was put out by the FCC stating as much. And part of that guidance was clarifying that GMRS stations can't be interconnected with the public switch telephone network or any other network for the purpose of carrying GMRS communications. There is a caveat to that. and it's that they may be connected to a network for the purpose of remotely controlling a GMRS station, but just not for the purpose of a voice communications. But I don't know, if I was going to offer something, I would say that linked GMRS repeaters should be allowed to connect to the internet. At least having that one system, be one of the exceptions, because I mean, we use the internet for damn near everything now anyway. And I think that it's in the spirit of one of the stated permissible uses of the service, which is emergency communication, which I've highlighted there in yellow. And I will say I wouldn't rely on the internet, of course, for emergency communications. In the past, even on this show, we've made a lot of arguments as to, why we use potentially HF maybe. And, if the internet's down, it's not going to help you. But if it's not down and you've got some GMRS linked repeaters and you have an emergency, say in, tornado or hurricane country, then this might be very useful for you to be able to communicate with other communities around you, and to both send and receive information, in a pinch. But I don't know, that would be mine, my suggestion. And I'm actually probably going to write this up, and I will submit it online in their online suggestion box, because I think that it's worthwhile.
Is the deadline April 11th? I think I saw that on the photo you posted.
I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah.
It could be. Let me just look through my notes really quick and see.
I think it's April 11th. Even if it's not a super useful plan to have a GMRS radio linked by the internet, is that really something that we need the FCC dictating to us?
It is April 11th, just to confirm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably just not needed for the FCC to decide what works best for us in that regard.
The only problem I see with linking repeaters is you'll get multiple repeaters linked together that's covering such a wide area. We'll say a statewide repeater system, which is great in theory. But if you have somebody in one corner of the state wanting to talk to somebody in their local area, and somebody in the other corner of the state wanting to talk to somebody in their local area, but these repeaters are all linked together, you're flooding the entire state with one conversation.
Well, there is an issue with stepping on each other for sure, but there's already kind of an issue with that with GMRS anyway, because it shares frequencies with FRS anyway. And then just certain frequencies are allocated for certain things.
Right.
Like for instance, there's 8 repeater inputs. And so, you've got an issue where, actually there's a guy down the street from me who has a GMRS repeater. I've got one here too. We're on the same frequency. It's like channel 16 or whatever it is. But we have different tones set up. So we're not, of course, stepping on each other, but you've already got limited bandwidth as it is. But I don't know. I think that if people were allowed to link them using the internet, I think we'd probably be able to figure out a solution for, what you're talking about, where we try and keep people from stepping on each other. And just because you're linking to the internet, I guess you'd probably want to pick a couple frequencies that were allocated just for that, or possibly expand the bandwidth where possible. But I think it'd be a cool thing. And, GMRS is a very popular thing right now. And I know that an argument might be just get your ham license and then you can do this, but not everyone wants to be a ham radio operator. And the barrier to entry for GMRS is, very attainable for most people. You don't have to take a test. You just basically pay a fee for a license. And I think that people should be able to have that functionality for emergency situations. I really do.
You could also microwave link repeaters together too. So if you and I had 2 repeaters and we were 20 miles away from each other, we can microwave link our 2 repeaters together and still get the same coverage without the internet.
Yeah, so maybe that would be a good suggestion to make as well, that they allocate a couple microwave frequencies to GMRSUs.
There would definitely be some logistics to try and talk about and sort out. I mean, I'm not saying that I have a fully fleshed out idea. I don't. But it was something that had occurred to me where I'm like, there's a lot of people that are now using GMRS for, I won't say emergency comms, backup comms, because I know that emergency comms is a little subjective, but for backup communications for, natural disasters and stuff. And it seems like it seems short-sighted to limit people from linking repeaters, especially when one of the stated objectives of GMRS, even in the rules, is for emergency communications. And let's see, Microwolf has a comment. Have a system where one repeater in a certain area with internet connection with GMRS, if you choose to, needed with a license. Yeah, I think this is something, definitely worth looking into. Like I said, I'm going to make this will be my suggestion. I'm going to write it up and submit it. And I don't know. We'll see if it goes anywhere. Maybe I might be the only dude that submits something for GMRS linking, but I don't know. We'll see.
Something else
a
that would be
shot.
good for GMRS linking is, like, I would like to put a GMRS repeater up in my area at my Pittsburgh house,
Mhm.
because there's no GMRS repeaters in that area. But I'm not there to watch it and monitor it and use it. But if I could link to it over to the internet, it would be very beneficial. I'd be able to have my dad get his GMRS license and talk to my dad on GMRS using my repeater back home in Pittsburgh. And
I figured out how to do it. I have all the equipment here to do it with. I figured out how to do it over Zello.
Yeah.
And I went into the config file and I was able to basically set the there's a part of the config file where there's a line for gateway and you can turn it on or off. And I was able to turn it on. And then it's actually, so if you go into Windows, I'm a Windows shop. So if you go into Windows and you unhide your folders, basically you can go into the bowels of Zello, alter this config file, and then adjust your settings within the Zello software after that. And then basically I connected a Motorola, what is it, like is it a CDM 1250? But basically I plugged that into an interface and connected that to a computer, and that radio connected to that computer was on the same frequency as my repeater. And, basically I could get those to work together.
Awesome.
It wasn't very reliable though. There were some issues where some latency issues. That certainly has to do with your internet's bandwidth, of course. And sometimes it wouldn't key up right away. It wouldn't break the squelch right away when you would start talking. So you had to be kind of patient. You had to hold the PTT button and give it a second, and then it would start picking up the transmission. But
are you able to change the AGC on the radio?
Yeah, they're not on the radio. There's
Because I think if you set the AGC to fast, it might not be as much latency.
it was mostly the software settings that I had to mess with. And there's basically like you can adjust the sensitivity, stuff like that, and how how many milliseconds it takes to, like, when it hears something. So it was quite involved, but it was just a experiment to see if I could get it to work. I know Bridgecom Systems. I don't know if you've heard of them or not, but they're an outfit. I think they're out of Missouri. But they offer a lot of plug and play packages. And for their amateur radio stuff, I believe they have some software already and basically some hardware that allows you to link repeaters. And It probably wouldn't be very difficult if, if linking was allowed. It wouldn't be very difficult for them to probably come up with an offering specifically for GMRS, and because it'd be a lot easier just to use an established software that's for that. I had a lot of trouble with Zello. I know there's a lot of people on the internet that have also kind of done what I'm saying with Zello. So it's not new or unique, but it would be cool. Let's see. We've got some comments. Let me just jump over here.
Sweet. Y'all remember you can submit comments via JSA call on 40 meter 7078.
Okay, so C103 says the North Georgia GMRS has a large network of repeaters and weekly net meetings. Zello is part. If that's internet based, I'm not sure. It is. That program is running pretty well. I know. Is it mygmrs.com? I thought they had something for a while, and I don't know if they're doing it now. But they were linking repeaters and telling people how to do it, and then I don't know if
I took it down.
I don't know. I guess people have stopped because of the SEC guidance from a year ago, but the guidance did seem a little ambiguous about, whether you could do it or not. So,
the concern about somebody gobbling up all of the GMRS frequencies in an entire state. I wonder if we can look at amateur radio to see if that's even happened there. I'm not aware of any state that is completely saturated with amateur radio repeaters, and
I'm not either,
to the point where nobody else can set up a repeater ever or use the frequency spectrum. So I wonder how founded of a concern that is. But I do acknowledge that it does seem a little bit more limited, the space that we have to work in with GMRS, since we just have those 7 or 8 frequencies.
I think it was a big thing up in New York where all the linked GMRS repeaters were happening, and it was covering such a wide area that other people were being basically shut out of that repeater because they couldn't get any airtime, or because it was linked to so many other repeaters in the state or the region, whatever.
But even like right now, even if somebody can't link repeaters, there's still so few repeater pairs to choose from that I don't know if that problem goes away, and somebody can still use that as a simplex frequency, like channel 20 or whatever, as a simplex frequency, even if there's a repeater on it. So yeah, I don't know, something inside me just says the FCC shouldn't be nosing in on that. Just back off and let us figure it out. I think average people are always going to figure out things for themselves better than the government, conflict resolution and everything.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just a fantasy.
And then Urcell said that the Zillow app, the one that I set up worked well, I thought. Yeah, we did some testing. It was Yardcell actually helped me test some things out, and some of it did work for a little while, but it just got a little bit difficult to manage, and I basically had to leave a machine running all the time, and I was having some issues with that machine, had to take it down, and it just got to be a little too much. But let's see. And then see, look, the comments are working tonight. I don't know. I guess that was a weird glitch we had last time. But Marker Wolf says, yes, that was New York when they linked on the GMRS radio together. They had to cut it off. Yeah. But yeah.
No, and I agree with you, Drew. I think the FCC should stay out of a lot of it and just let us figure it out. And
the only problem with some of it is that I mean, I understand the need for certain rules. So for instance, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been on CB radio lately, but it's difficult to communicate on. I mean, you've got people with amps that are, stepping on others, and there's not a whole lot of etiquette or anything. So, I mean, a lot of the amateur radio people have a good argument on some of the stuff where they're like, hey, I understand that you don't like certain rules, but there's also a reason for some of this stuff. I mean, if for instance, completely deregulated amateur radio, it would end up like CB radio, and it would be just a
Would
mess.
it? Because
I think it would
there's
be.
rules. There's rules on CB radio.
People
You're
don't
not
follow
allowed
them.
to use more than like and there's no enforcement. So if
There's also
what
no
is
self-policing either on CB radio.
there's no self-policing on amateur radio either. Get real. It doesn't
A little
exist.
bit. A little
People
bit.
knock on doors. I mean, it's like I still none at all. I don't believe
I think
it.
it's
Otherwise,
more cultural
frequencies like
stuff.
3840 wouldn't be filled with filth. It exists. It happens now.
Well, I mean,
I don't believe that
it does-
self-policing exists.
Well, I think some people probably don't. When I listen to my local repeaters and stuff, a lot of these guys do self-police. CB radio, they don't.
So your friend tells you, hey, I think you shouldn't do this because it's rude to others, and you voluntarily go, oh, okay, I didn't think about it that way. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, that's just people being genuinely kind and good. But like somebody who's actually violating rules and causing problems, they go and they knock on the door and they say, hey, we know who you are. We're reporting you to the FCC. And the FCC does nothing. And so without enforcement, I don't know what policing is other than guys just being mentors to each other.
Well, interestingly, like you said, the FCC recommended that we handle it ourselves.
I think it's more of a cultural self-policing than it is an actual enforcement.
Okay. I agree with you there. And that could very well happen on CB, but it's not. But let's just be honest. Let's be intellectually honest about this. The reason we don't have that on amateur radio is because there's a psychological barrier to entry. Most people don't understand it. They don't understand where we're operating and what we do, and they don't have friends who are
Miko Wolf this entire time. I've been saying Micro Wolf, and it's Miko Wolf, and I just
that's funny.
My bad. But he says that GMRS should be licensed to keep the crazy off of it, like CB people. Yeah, it should
maybe. But the other day, I heard a guy swearing up a storm on GMRS, and there's nobody came out and knocked on his door. I guarantee it.
So this is currently the main solution to a lot of this stuff is fox hunting people. But what happens at the end of the fox hunt after you catch him?
We go in as makeshift FCC SWAT teams and kick in doors. And
is that when you get out the minivan?
Exactly.
the minivan assault vehicle, like on your video, yeah.
The Barbie girl assault vehicle shows up in your door.
That would terrify me away from touching a radio ever again, actually.
Well, and there are people
you didn't like my Barbie girl video, Drew?
I thought it was cool.
We loved it. Everybody loved it. What are you talking? We keep telling you we love it. That's why we bring it up all the time.
But yeah, I don't know.
That's why we'll never let you forget about it. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Ever, yeah. Well, I mean, but again, it's like what happens at the end of that fox hunt. Like, I mean, do you go knock on the person's door and
gotta have some sort of enforcement authority, and none of us have that.
You go to their house at 2:00 in the morning and you cut their coax, or you put a pin in it like we used to when we were kids.
Nice. I guess.
Not that
but then they can come after you. You'd be the one who gets the negative enforcement on that, guaranteed.
Right.
Get an ass full of rock salt.
There was someone here that was jamming one of the 2-meter repeaters that's linked, and they seem to have stopped. So I don't know if they stopped because they got bored, or if maybe the local ham club fox hunted this person. But I haven't heard it recently, which is good. But I don't know. I think one of the things to probably, I did a video recently on that, and
right.
I think one of the things to do is probably just ignore it, and it'll go away eventually.
Well, the Venn diagram of a jammer versus an internet troll is a dot. So they're looking for a reaction. They're trying to get your goat, and if you don't give them that, then they lose interest.
Right. They get bored
sometimes.
That is true. Well, let's see.
I could break out the crack and go direction find them.
Right. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Give me a second.
You know what would be great? You ever see those videos of places like France and the Netherlands where the farmers roll up with a gigantic trailer of manure in front of whatever government agency they're upset about, and they just dump like several tons of manure on? That would be
Right on the
That's what
front
we
step.
should do for jammers. Yes. Enjoy
So I saw
jamming.
this, and this will also kind of segue into our current events segment here. So I saw this, and this is up in Linwood, Washington, and I guess this guy had cut off a Tesla driver and basically walked up to this gal's car and told her that she needed to sell her Tesla because I guess Tesla's
Psychopath.
the new Nazi. But I don't know if you guys have seen this. I'm sure you've heard of the
No.
Tesla car lots that people have been throwing Molotov cocktails at and all kinds of stuff. But it seems that the Tesla is becoming the new MAGA hat. So if you drive a
Absurd.
Tesla, you are now you're a target.
And 1 year ago, all these
Let's see
stupid
if this will
libtard
play.
tree huggers were wanting to buy Teslas, and now they're targeting them.
I remember the Biden administration not inviting Tesla representatives to the White House for EV summits, for meetings about electric vehicles. So I don't think that is entirely new, but yeah, the violence and the property destruction is definitely something a little bit more of an escalation.
Let's see if I can.
What a
find this.
disappointment. What a absolute
There
disappointment.
may be a little bit of buffering.
Cut off and berated,
here we go.
and it was all captured on camera. A woman that was driving said the man that did all this was angry because she was driving a Tesla.
Gun out.
As
Gun out
Officer
now.
Alejandro Guzman
100%.
was just to a doctor's appointment. She has the latest from South Lake Union out.
Looked like there was plenty of space up on the right side of that too.
Though she's afraid to drive her car.
Was there space to pass him on the right up on that hill? I couldn't tell.
Number of incidents targeting Tesla owners, not just here locally, but nationwide.
I was thankfully by myself.
Lee was on the way. A driver behind her just laid on the horn as they came up to a red light. Things spiraled out of control when a white SUV.
Can she go up on the sidewalk there? On the right?
Stopping in the middle of the road.
Yeah, there's room.
Window.
Even if she's driving a little sedan or something, she could get around that.
For the problem, he goes.
He's got a fucking mask. Sorry, he's got a mask on. Yeah, he needs a gun pointed at his stomach through the door, and she needs to go around on the right.
Last two. No, ski mask attacked her for it.
It's really sad, like that. This is what.
That's what truck
So
guns
yeah,
are for. Right?
that's been apparently happening, which
That's a carjacking until proven otherwise, as far as I'm concerned.
I thought that the Volkswagen was the car that was touted by the Nazis, not the Tesla. That was the people's car. So I think they got it wrong. But it's just kind of funny that, like I said, it's the new MAGA hat. So I wouldn't be surprised if all year you're going to be seeing this kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, they were.
What's the guy doing? He's just trying to cut government waste.
Elon.
Right. He's trying to preserve freedom of speech.
They were all in love with him a few years ago.
Social media.
Exactly.
He's cutting government waste. I don't understand why people are defending government waste.
Well, when Biden shuts down the pipeline and 20,000 people lose their jobs.
Oh, he loves it. They love it.
It's okay for them to say, hey, it's okay. You could just go find another job. But when you start cutting government waste and government employees because their job is wasteful, now you're the bad guy.
Spot on.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to be seeing this stuff throughout the year. You're going to be seeing this kind of stuff come up, and it's very similar to people stopping traffic in 2020 during all of the George Floyd protests and riots. And for whatever reason, this stuff just is not going away.
And that lady's not, I guarantee she's not an employee of Doge. What is she going to do? Okay, so this guy gets his way and she sells her Tesla on the secondary market, so then somebody else buys it? So what? What difference does it do?
Now you have two victims?
I don't know why they would be
Asinine.
going after people driving Teslas. You know,
They're
Because
idiots.
it represents Elon Musk. That's the
well,
only reason.
you know, the whole MAGA hat thing. You know, if you wore a MAGA hat a few years ago, you know, you were essentially making a political statement.
If I drive a Ford, I'm not representing the Ford CEO. I don't even know who that guy is.
Exactly.
Or gal,
Exactly.
whoever the hell that is. If they do something heinous, do I have to sell my Ford? I don't understand. This is ridiculous. It's a product.
Just because I have a certain healthcare company doesn't mean that it gives you the right to go target somebody and shoot the CEO of that healthcare company either.
But
Fair enough.
that happened. and people are making a hero out of that guy. Still.
Which I understand why.
Yeah, it's
I don't condone it, but I understand it.
yeah.
Mm.
But it looks like we've made it to our 1 hour mark. I am out of topics. Do you guys have anything you want to bring up?
Yeah, you know, something on my mind lately has been what team we're on in America and how that influences our perception of truth and facts. And I just don't think that what team we're on should dictate what the facts are. The facts are immutable. The facts just are. And so if the facts are inconvenient to my paradigm, my outlook on things, that doesn't change what the fact is. And so I think America has a sickness right now, and it's influencing our perception of the facts, and I don't like it. And what comes to mind is, you know, like RFK's his handling right now of the measles outbreak. I'm not a huge RFK fan, but you know, he is recommending vaccination for measles, and regardless of somebody's view on RFK, for somebody to come out and say that he's not recommending vaccines when demonstrably he has recommended them in a written format, it's just as disgusting as a couple years ago when Donald Trump clearly condemned neo-Nazis, but then he's still continuing to have to deal with this false slanderous allegation that he called them fine people. And I just, you know, regardless of what team we're on, I just think we should all have we should all focus on some introspection in how that influences our perception of the facts, because maybe I'm not explaining myself very well, but that's just something that's been on my mind lately.
Yeah, there were quite a few articles. I believe Rolling Stone published one. You and I were kind of chatting about that previously. And I believe another news outfit in New York that I can't think of off the top of my head also had articles basically taking RFK Jr.'s words and misrepresenting what he was trying to say. And they were essentially just saying that he was anti-vaccination, which he's not. And, you know, they were just trying to use this COVID era label of you're an anti-vaxxer to basically dehumanize someone. And a guy that talks a lot about the dangers of othering is Steve, Corsair Trainers. And
Sure.
he's mentioned that quite a few times. And he's like, that's one of the slippery slopes to violence in a society is othering people. You know, you've got people stopping Tesla owners on the street and calling them Nazis. You're othering people when you do that.
100%.
Same thing with the MAGA hat stuff. You know, like committing violence against someone who has a MAGA hat. You know, you're othering people, and it's wrong. It's unethical.
But just because I don't like somebody who doesn't give me the right to lie about them. I really don't like Hillary Clinton, but she probably didn't murder a girl and drink her spinal cord fluid or blood or whatever the allegation is. That's probably didn't happen. So I can still not like Hillary Clinton, but not lie about her too. I don't have to like Trump, but he didn't call neo-Nazis fine people. That's just been proven a lie time and time again.
Well, and to be fair, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you've been a little bit of a critic of Trump.
We should criticize all politicians, regardless of what team they're on.
I agree. And you don't seem like someone who's been just because you're on a team repeating the same talking points like a lot of people do. And I think that's probably the disease of cable news. You can,
Maybe.
depending
Or
on what your
tribalism and
depending on what
othering.
your flavor is, if you jump on any cable news outlet, they're all doing the same thing. They're saying different things for their
They're just a
team,
bunch
but
of echo boxes.
yeah, they're all saying things that they all like to hear, and they're othering everybody else, and they're all doing it, and they've been doing it for years, and I think you're right. There probably does need to be some sort of self reflection in this country. We probably need some sort of, I don't know, like American Renaissance or something, where you kind of revisit, like, what does it even mean to be an American? What
Amen.
what's our next steps in this country? As a society, where are we headed, and where do we want to see ourselves? And I think if you don't do that, you probably risk becoming stagnant and bored, and I think you probably lose purpose and direction if you don't. But I don't know. What do you think, Jared?
I try very hard not to take sides, so to speak, whether Republican or Democrat or whatever, because I don't consider myself either one. I don't want to say middle of the road. I definitely lean more right on most things, but I also don't want to discount what the left has to say either, because they do have a lot of valid points if you talk to somebody that's actually responding non-emotionally and fact-based. And I think there can be a lot of good common ground if people would just take some of the emotion out of it. And
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Real conversation without calling each other neo-Nazi pigs and so on and so forth. And so much more to get done if you would just actually have a real fact-based conversation.
I think you hit the nail on the head that, we do have a lot of common ground in this country. And, if people did take the emotion part out of it, because it is just politics,
and for people to unfriend somebody, not like Facebook, or just stop being friends with somebody and hate somebody that they've been friends with for a long time because they're now a Republican or they're now toting Democratic ideologies and they're ruining friendships over it, is just, to me, that's obscene. Why would you ruin friendships over a group of people,
I think
or a person that has no interest in your life or doesn't even know that you exist?
I think there are probably some people that you can't reach, and it is what it is. But
sure.
But I think you're absolutely right that a lot of people just lose sight of all the common ground that we really do have, like eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. Even if you don't like Elon Musk, whatever, but
It should be a bipartisan goal.
That should be a bipartisan goal. Like, that's something in everyone's interest, actually. Like, especially if you're even if you're the biggest leftists in the world who want socialism and the government to give you a stipend every month. Like, if you really want to have all these social entitlements and stuff like that, eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, all these pork projects that these politicians come up with, and just wasteful spending. And if you really do want to spend it on, homeless people and stuff like that, hey, I'm all for that. But, we can't have both. We can't be spending it on all these really great social programs and, transgendered operas in Panama. You can't have
but
both.
the left is they're so hell-bent on giving these transgender opera people millions of dollars. Why do you want to give them that money? What?
Well, because it's not going where they're saying it's going.
No, absolutely not.
It's not. They're
they might be getting $10,000 out of $1 million that's allocated to it.
Someone's getting a cut from that for sure, but I highly doubt, and I can't prove this right now, but you know, just looking at some of the stuff that they were allocating money for, I mean, like, really, you're really spending money on that? Like, you're really spending millions of dollars on some of this stuff, and it's like I highly
Crazy.
doubt that. I think it's going somewhere else, and
That's a reasonable assumption until proven otherwise.
I think there's a lot of money laundering going on. There has to be.
Absolutely.
There has to be.
Absolutely.
And you know, like, you know, yet they'll come after us for, like, you know, you better fill out this form that you know, over that $600 you sent to Drew or something. You know, it's like we're gonna audit you and come after you and ruin your life. You know, it's like, what the fuck? But you know, we can spend billions of dollars.
By the way, if anyone does want to send $600 to me, I can.
We'll put your PayPal up. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I'll post my Venmo at the bottom of the screen.
But yeah, I don't know. It's good that you bring that up, Drew, though, because it's true that, you know, now that some people are on the bad orange man's team, you know, like RFK Jr., they went after Tulsi Gabbard. A lot of these people who are
those people were Democrats for a long time, right?
Well, you know,
and now they're suddenly evil.
Like RFK Jr. is a pragmatist. Like there's nothing crazy about that guy. He's not.
Well, except for, you know, running over a bear and dumping it into a city park. And, I mean, there's some weird stuff about him, let's be honest. But his messaging on this is, oh yeah, who hasn't dumped a roadkill bear in Central Park? Forgive me. Anyway, but I don't even know where I was going with that. But just to make up demonstrable lies about him and to say he's getting people killed when he literally said, you should talk to your doctor. It's a personal choice, but talk to your doctor. See if getting vaccinated is right for you.
Well, the View, I think it was the View. Hopefully I'm getting this right, but like because they say a lot of crazy shit, right? But they were accusing her of being a Russian agent, and they had her as a guest. Yeah, and then they had her as a guest on there, and she was like, you know, confronted them about it, and they pretty much doubled down on it. But it's like, you know, up until then, you know, she was on the left, on the blue team, and everything was kosher. And then as soon as she decided to, you know, I won't call it switch sides, because I like to think that some of these people, at least, I know that not all of them, but at least some of them are acting in our best interest. At least I have to believe that to keep the dream going, right?
Spiraling too far into depression.
What else we got? Jared, is there anything you want to talk about? Anything that's
something else on the FCC regulations that I wanted to talk about, and I can't remember what it was now. It'll come back to me.
Well, if you think of something.
I think actually Drew brought it up. It was about the bandwidth and the baud rate and whatnot. That's all.
Kilo 7. Oscar Papa X-Ray, you caught us just before the end. He says, good evening. He or she, I shouldn't assume. I don't know who that is. But thank you so much for commenting.
Indeed. Thank you. There was someone that actually jumped on JSA. That's awesome.
Yes!
Well, like we were saying last time, you know, it's like you're not going to, you know.
Not the first, but he's one of the few.
You're not going to sharpen your skills unless you get on there and try and, you know.
I really need to get on getting this HF net for all of us scheduled.
That is something we've been talking about for a little while.
I just haven't worked on it on my end, and I should probably do that here pretty soon.
You're talking about with voice?
Yeah.
I got some work to do. I can't figure out how to make voice work on my radio.
Digital too. It doesn't matter.
I don't know if
I'm a millennial. I don't talk to people.
I wonder if I can reach you on voice, Jared, because you're all the way on the East Coast.
We did once before.
Well, it's not necessarily the radio. It's more my antenna, because I've got an HOA, and I've got basically this alpha and fed antenna stuck up in my attic, right?
Maybe we just did it on digital. I can't remember now.
Well, I'm able to make good contacts on JS8. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm just wondering, I don't know. Voice seems to be a little squirrely, but I mean, I'll certainly try. But I think if we try it on 20 meter, like Drew's saying, we could probably get like an HF net going and maybe do something once a week or something. And we could probably use, I think all the cool kids are using like NetLogger or something like that. And we could probably like register the net and
Probably
put a
could,
ring
yeah.
on it and put a ring on it, make it official. But that might be fun. But we probably have a little bit of homework to do to figure out how to make this work.
Right.
Because I think
One
all
of
the people
bands
in
I thought would be really cool to use would be 60 meter band. But then I started thinking we're so limited on that band because you're only limited to 100 watt CRP.
Yeah.
And basically anyone that's using it's going to have a half wave dipole, more or less. So I don't know that it's going to be that effective. I think it'd be a cool band to be able to use, though.
Yeah. But
Got another comment from Kilo 7 Oscar Papa X-ray. And I actually did log him previously. He's from Utah. Says 1 watt from SLC Utah. And I'm getting him at +1 dB here in North Idaho. Pretty awesome. That is so sweet. JSA calls just wild.
What does it say? What equipment he's running?
Oh, I
know there's
we're getting
a way to
there.
look it up.
We're getting there. I'd have to look it up on PSK Reporter or something if he was reporting to PSK Reporter.
And Yard Cell says NetLogger is easy to use. I was checking it out, and it looks like there's some functionality that we could definitely take advantage of, especially if we're going to set up a net. It looks cool. One of the things that I thought that I read, I hope I'm not mistaken, is that it can integrate with QRZ.com or something like that. And so like some of the data, like like your call sign and all that stuff that's tied to you somehow integrates, I think, with NetLogger. But I'll have to confirm that. But it seems like it'd be cool. I just didn't want to set anything up until we actually established that we can communicate with each other on voice.
Right. Maybe one day this weekend we can try that.
Yeah, I've got my I'm tinkering with my Zygo X5105. I'm looking at it right now. It's sitting on my desk.
Do we know how to pronounce that word? Is it Shigu? Zygu?
It's probably
Zigu?
Shigu or Yeah, it's probably Shigu or something. But I'm an American, and X's are Z's, so it's Zygo. Gulf of America. Damn right. But yeah, I was experimenting with that a little bit. I am able to. I've got it kind of set up to where like it's kind of working. I think I'll probably get an amp for it, but I'll probably use my 710 if we're going to do this because I think I'll probably get a little bit more reliable.
What kind of antenna do you have, Drew?
Here at home, I've got a NFED half wave. I don't have anything terribly fancy. And my portable kit is an NFED half wave too. I've also got a random wire antenna made out of a tape measure. Go on YouTube at Terminal Element, learn how I managed that, bumbled my way through that project. But I'm really liking the random wire antennas. They're so simple and they seem fairly effective, even with just junk you find laying around.
Yeah,
just get a 1 to 9 on there and go to town.
Yeah, I made one with a banana plug and worked pretty well. Worked better than I thought it was going to. So, and I hooked up to my antenna analyzer. So, anything new on GS8?
Nope, not yet. No, I think we're done.
Okay. Well, with that, I don't have anything else to cover. Sounds like you guys are good too. So, I guess we'll close up shop. But do you guys have anything that you would like to wrap up with? I guess Drew, if you want to go first.
God bless America. And the Shigu G90. Shoot.
We're going to have to look at how to pronounce that.
I have no idea.
I've always heard it called Zygu. It
was a pleasure talking with you all. My channel is youtube.com/@terminalelement. You could probably get there by going www.terminalelement.com. I talk about a variety of radio topics and backup off-grid digital communication that you can set up with your family. Try to focus on practical solutions, and I hope to see you there. Jared, over to you.
I'm up. The right of the people. shall not be infringed. So it's the only amendment that cannot be changed by its wording by Congress or any other act. So shall not be
And preexists the
It
Constitution,
pre-exists.
predates it.
Exactly. So other than that, nope, I don't have anything else. I think it was a good show tonight. My channel is 2 Alpha Solutions, and someday I'll have some good content on there. But until then, just
You're working on it. You're
I
getting there.
am. I have great ideas, and I just can't ever get them to come to fruition.
You always,
PCG.
I don't know. You always say that you don't have good content, but you do. You've got a lot of good stuff. It's just, it is hard to. I have ideas about stuff too, and then I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
Exactly. Or then I start to make the video, and I'm like, boy, I sound like a blooming idiot talking about this, and I start stumbling over my words. And
I do try and stay in my lane with things that I know, but it's easy to get out of your lane in amateur radio because it is technical, and it is easy to start talking about stuff and think that you've got good information, and then later on you're like, crap, that wasn't real.
right.
But
You know,
So
I do have
Kilo-
a project I'm trying to work on. I'd like to do a video on. I'm trying to do a crossband repeat to an HF from VHF or UHF to HF.
Yeah.
Between my 9700 and 7300. So
That's cool.
Working on that. So legally, you can only really do it to 10 meters or 6 meters. Technically, you could do it on all bands, and it should crossband from sideband to FM and FM to sideband.
Drew, what do you
All
got?
right, our friend in Utah reports he's using a Xiegu G106 and a half-wave dipole at 16 feet above ground.
Cool. Well, good for you.
Now we know.
Yeah. Now we've got a new friend to play with in Utah. That's cool.
Wicked.
Awesome.
Fantastic performance.
I have a
PCG, tell us about your channel.
KT36 at 100 feet in the air.
You have a what?
KT36 6-element beam at 100 feet in the air.
Well, you have a
Well, you got
fancy
that
tower.
Big city radio tower.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're-
out in the country.
We're just small
Highfalutin.
town ham radio guys. You're one of
Right.
the big city radio guys.
I'm not even in the city. I'm in the middle of nothing.
I was just trying to
Joking
make you
around.
sound, all bourgeoisie, but
See, if you get out of the city, you can have this big stuff.
yeah, well, that was like I said. I mean, we've got an HOA, so I had to kind of work within my means. But the next house that we buy, we'll do it right. I'll get like a few acres or something, and I'll put up a.
You need to
tower.
go up north of the city there by Pyramid Lake somewhere.
Yeah, they're building quite a. They're building quite a bit.
Or-
This place has grown.
Then
Or
you can
down-
go
down to Groom Lake.
in your backyard every summer.
I don't know that we'll stay in Nevada though. We'll see. We may not, because when my wife and I got married, we promised each other that part of our vows was that we'd go on adventures together. And Phil Rablis from Matter of Fact's podcast, he had an anniversary with his wife, so congratulations, sir, if you're watching. But yeah, speaking of stuff like that, we promised each other we'd go on adventures together. So this may not be our last stop. Might check out maybe another area in the country. Not quite sure yet, but
Awesome.
If or when that happens, my dream is to at least have a little bit of land and put up a tower and stuff, and maybe even like a berm so I can go shooting. So that'd be cool. Have my own shooting range.
Austin, Nevada, land is really cheap out there.
In Austin? Where's Austin? I don't even know where that is.
About 200 miles to your east on Highway 50.
Oh, towards Utah?
Yeah, it's right in the middle of the state.
You said on the 50?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
That's a
loneliest highway in the world.
spooky highway, man.
I loved it out there. I mean, I lived out there for years, but
Yeah.
I would love to come back, but that'll never happen.
I think you're banned, aren't you?
Probably.
I'm just busting your balls. I'm sure you're not.
Sure, I
All
am.
right. Well, cool. Well, with that, I guess that'll do it.
Plug your channel. Terrence, plug your channel. You never plug your channel.
I never mentioned my name or my channel. That is true.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
You just doxed him,
because
Drew.
I didn't mean to
no,
dox you.
I
What am I
don't,
supposed to call you?
Well, I mean, people will drop my name and stuff, but it's not. It's intentional because I try to put the focus on you guys and not myself.
White guy in the upper left corner. Tell us about your channel.
I'm just the guy that
T. We're gonna call him Mr. T.
I'm just the guy that works the levers and the buttons.
Not enough gold from Mr. T.
But yeah, you can check my YouTube channel out. It's Partisan Comms Group. Have a website, partisancommsgroup.com, where I tie everything together. And I've got an Instagram, and I dabble a little bit in podcast episodes because I get bored of doing radio stuff, and I like to branch out and do other weird stuff, which some people hate it and some like it, but whatever. In fact, there will be a new podcast episode for Partisan Comms Podcast that will be released on Wednesday. And
Nice.
It's on the disappearance of Kenny Veach. And if you don't know who that is, it's this YouTuber that was looking for this mysterious M cave, and he disappeared in the desert. And so I go into, I think it's about an hour long, maybe.
You've been working on that one for a while.
Oh no, I've been done with that one. I'm up to episode 19 right now. So on my website, it actually lists all the ones that are going to be released, and they're basically scheduled to be released throughout the year. But because I like to spread things out, give people stuff to look at when they're bored, I guess. But yeah, I'm up to episode 19 now. And I just like to do weird, unusual stuff. And that's about it. So if you're interested in weird things, check out my YouTube channel. And if you don't like what you see, then make sure you dislike and unsubscribe. So
just thumbs down everything.
Just thumbs down all of it. I guess that doesn't actually do
comment
anything.
Incoherently. Oh, that's probably just engagement farming.
It is. Yeah. I was researching and I'm
point.
like, if someone like hates my video and they thumbs down it, like, what happens? And I was researching, and I guess it really is just counted as engagement. It just basically the user is saying, I don't want to see any more of this, so stop driving this type of traffic to me. Because I don't know that, I don't know. Otherwise, I don't know why you'd have the thumbs down button if it doesn't do anything.
So it's
make you feel terrible.
Yeah, well, what I do is I usually end up feeling bad about myself, and I just sit and think about quitting, and then I come up with a new idea, and I'm like, you know what? Just to piss these people off, I'm going to make another video.
Yeah,
but
take that.
And then
more
the whole
free
cycle
content.
the whole cycle just starts over and over again. I just start feeling bad about myself. I'm like, you know what? Fuck these people. I'm going to make another video and make them all mad. And then we'll have something new to talk about next week.
And they'll watch it.
And they'll tell me how much they hate it. Some of those are the most interesting comments, though, the negative ones.
It's a fascinating window into human psychology.
It is. At least people are watching, I guess, right? But with that, thanks again, you guys, for your time and doing this every month. And it looks like we've been making it a regular thing. So we'll keep it going until we get sick of doing this, and then we'll just burn it all down. All of you that have subscribed and been watching and participating in the chat and also on JS8, thank you as well. We wouldn't do this if you guys didn't do that. Otherwise, it'd just be the three of us talking to each other, and I don't know what it'd turn into.
Boring.
It turned into Lord of the Flies pretty quickly.
I have
with
that.
Who would be Piggy? Oh, it would be me, wouldn't it? Oh,
Sure would.
You remember? I don't know what age you guys saw the movie, but I remember watching it as a kid, and they pushed the rock on Piggy's head, and I was like, Jesus, like this could happen,
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's Piggy.
And they were all well-behaved British kids too. But anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and that's it for now. And then whenever we schedule the next show, I'll throw that out, like we've been doing, and go from there. But thanks for now, and talk to you all soon.
Thank you.